If you were trying to figure out what career you want, the worst place to start is with the question, what is my passion? That question sounds deep, but it usually leaves you staring at a blank page, comparing yourself to people who look more certain than they really are. A better question is much more practical. What kind of work fits you, is actually available in the market, and still feels tolerable when you test it in real life? That is the 3-test method. You do not choose a career by thinking harder until your whole future becomes clear. You narrow it down by running 3 checks. First, the fit test. Does this kind of work match your interests, strengths, values, and working style? Second, the market test. Are there real jobs, decent pay, reasonable requirements, and a path in? Third, the energy test. After you try a small version of the work, do you want to learn more? Or do you feel your body quietly saying, please do not make this my life? This matters because a lot of people make career decisions from incomplete evidence. They hate their current job, so anything else looks better. They see one person on LinkedIn making a career look glamorous. They buy a certificate before checking job postings. They apply to roles because the title sounds good, then get rejected because they do not understand what the role actually does. The goal here is not to find a perfect career. Perfect is a trap. The goal is to find a direction that is strong enough to test, explain, and pursue without wasting years guessing. Let's start with the first test, the fit test. The fit test asks, what kind of work makes sense for the way I naturally operate? Not what job title sounds impressive, not what your family respects, not what sounds safe at dinner. The fit test looks at patterns. Think about your past work, school projects, volunteer work, side projects, or even the tasks people always ask you to help with. When have you been useful without forcing it? When have you learned quickly? When have you cared enough to improve the result? You were looking for clues, not destiny. For example, maybe you do not love marketing, but you enjoy figuring out why people click on one message and ignore another. Maybe you do not love healthcare, but you like calming people down, organizing information, and following procedures carefully. Maybe you do not love tech, but you like solving structured problems and building things that actually work. Notice the difference. A vague career interest says, I want to do something creative. A useful career clue says, I like turning messy information into clear language, especially when the audience is confused. That clue can point toward content design, technical writing, training, customer education, marketing operations, or product support. One helpful tool here is the ONET Interest Profiler from the U.S. Department of Labor. It is based on a model that groups work interests into 6 areas, often called realistic, investigative, artistic, social, enterprising, and conventional. You do not need to treat the result like a prophecy. Treat it like a vocabulary builder. If your results suggest social and enterprising interests, that does not mean you must become a salesperson or counselor. It means you may want to explore work that involves people, influence, teaching, persuasion, advising, or coordination. But interests alone are not enough. You also need strengths. A career can be interesting and still be a bad match if the daily skills drain you or expose a weakness you do not want to spend years correcting. Here is a simple exercise. Write down 3 tasks you are better at than the average person around you. Not world-class, just noticeably better. Maybe you can explain complicated ideas. Maybe you spot errors. Maybe you make nervous customers feel heard. Maybe you organize chaos. Maybe you can teach yourself software quickly. Then, write down 3 tasks that drain you even when you are capable of doing them. This part matters. Being good at something does not automatically mean you should build your career around it. You might be good at conflict management, but exhausted by constant emotional labor. You might be good at spreadsheets, but miserable if the job is pure reporting with no human context. A weak fit statement sounds like this. I want a job where I can help people and be creative. That is too broad to guide a job search. A stronger fit statement sounds like this. I want work where I explain information clearly, improve messy processes, and support people without being in non-stop crisis mode. Now we can search better. That statement might point toward learning and development, customer success operations, onboarding, internal communications, HR coordination, or program coordination. Before we move to the second test, if this kind of practical career breakdown is useful, subscribe. This channel is for people who are qualified, capable, and tired of sending applications into a black hole. The goal is to make the job search less mysterious and more workable. Now let's talk about the market test. This is where a lot of career advice gets too dreamy. It tells you to follow your strengths, but it does not ask whether anyone hires for them, what the job is called, what the requirements are, or whether the entry point is realistic. The market test asks, can this direction survive contact with actual job postings? You are not asking, is this field perfect? You are asking 5 practical questions. What job titles show up repeatedly? What problems do those jobs solve for employers? What skills appear across many postings? What experience do employers keep asking for? And what would I need to prove before someone would interview me? Let's say you are interested in user experience research because you like psychology, technology, and understanding people. That sounds promising, but the market test forces you to look at real postings. You may find that many roles ask for research planning, usability testing, interview synthesis, survey design, stakeholder communication, and experience turning findings into product recommendations. That does not mean you should quit immediately or buy the most expensive boot camp. It means you now know the proof employers are looking for. A weak career plan says, I think UX sounds cool, so I'm going to get certified. A stronger career plan says, I reviewed 20 UX research postings. The repeated skills are interview planning, synthesis, usability testing, and presenting insights. Before I pay for training, I'm going to complete 2 small research projects, talk to 3 people in the field, and compare junior roles with adjacent roles like product operations, customer insights, and research coordinator. That is a much better way to think. The market test also protects you from title confusion. Some careers use similar words but involve very different work. Analyst can mean spreadsheets, dashboards, finance models, operations reporting, policy research, data cleaning, or business recommendations. Project manager can mean scheduling and follow-up in one company, but budget ownership and stakeholder conflict in another. Marketing can mean writing, campaign operations, analytics, events, paid ads, brand strategy, or sales enablement. If you only choose from titles, you can fool yourself. If you choose from tasks and requirements, you get closer to reality. Use job postings like evidence. Open 10 to 20 postings for roles that interest you. Copy the responsibilities into a document. Highlight repeated verbs, not buzzwords, verbs. Build, analyze, coordinate, present, troubleshoot, sell, design, document, forecast, negotiate, train. Those verbs tell you what the job is really paying someone to do. Then look at the requirements. Separate them into 3 categories: must-have skills, learnable tools, and gatekeepers. A must-have skill might be writing SQL queries for a data analyst role. A learnable tool might be a specific dashboard platform if you already understand the underlying work. A gatekeeper might be a required license, security clearance, degree, location, or years of regulated industry experience. This is where many career changers get discouraged too quickly. If you are missing everything, the role may be too far for your next move. But if you have some transferable proof and can build the rest, the role may be realistic. Also, compare the role with adjacent roles. If your target is product manager, you might find an easier bridge through product operations, implementation, customer success, business analyst, or project coordinator. If your target is data analyst, you might bridge through reporting analyst, operations analyst, marketing analyst, or finance analyst, depending on your background. Career clarity often comes from finding the bridge role, not the dream title. Now, the third test is the one most people skip, and it is the one that saves the most pain. The energy test asks, what happens when I try a small, real version of this work? Not when I imagine it, not when I watch a day-in-the-life video, not when I read a salary estimate. What happens when I actually do a slice of the work? This matters because careers are not experienced as titles. They are experienced as calendars, tasks, people, deadlines, tools, meetings, feedback, ambiguity, and repetition. You may like the idea of being a data analyst until you spend 6 hours cleaning messy data and realize you only enjoy the final chart. You may like the idea of being a therapist until you recognize how much emotional intensity the work carries. You may like the idea of entrepreneurship until you discover that most days involve sales, follow-up, rejection, and unglamorous operations. The energy test does not require a huge commitment. In fact, it should usually happen before expensive training. You can run an informational interview. Ask someone, what are the 3 tasks you do every week that outsiders would not expect? Ask, what makes someone fail in this role? Ask, what did you have to learn in the first 6 months? Ask, if someone came from my background, what role would be the most realistic entry point? Those questions are better than, can I pick your brain? They show you are serious and they produce specific information. You can job shadow if that is available. You can volunteer for a small project. You can create a portfolio experiment. You can take a short course, but pair it with an output, not just a certificate. If you are exploring instructional design, create a 5-minute training module that teaches a real process. If you are exploring operations, map a broken process and redesign it. If you are exploring communications, rewrite a confusing internal announcement into something employees could actually follow. If you are exploring data, take a public data set, ask a business question, clean the data, and explain what decision the analysis supports. The point is not to become an expert overnight. The point is to create evidence. After each experiment, ask 4 questions. Did I get curious while doing it? Did I avoid it for days? Did the hard parts feel like problems I wanted to solve or problems I wanted to escape? And could I imagine improving at this for the next year? That last question is important. You do not need to love every minute. Most good careers still include boring parts. But if the learning process itself feels dead, pay attention. Here is how the 3 tests work together. Imagine someone named Maya. She is a customer service supervisor. She is burned out from escalations and wants something in tech. That is too vague. For the fit test, she notices she is strong at explaining systems, training new hires, spotting process issues, and translating customer complaints into clear patterns. She does not want a job that is mostly cold outreach or constant emotional de-escalation. For the market test, she studies postings and finds several possible directions. Customer success manager, implementation specialist, product support specialist, training specialist, and business analyst. She notices that business analyst roles often ask for process mapping, requirements gathering, documentation, stakeholder communication, and sometimes SQL. For the energy test, she does 3 small trials. She interviews 2 business analysts. She maps the refund escalation process at her current company and writes a 1-page improvement proposal. Then she takes a short beginner SQL course and completes 1 small project. Now she has a clearer answer. Not, my passion is tech. A better answer is, I'm exploring business analyst and implementation roles because my strongest proof is translating user problems into process improvements, documentation, and cross-functional follow-up. That sentence can become a LinkedIn headline, a resume summary, a networking message, and an interview answer. And that is the real value of career clarity. It does not just make you feel better, it makes you easier to understand in the job market. Employers are not trying to hire your entire personality. They are trying to understand what problem you can solve, where you fit, how much training risk you bring, and whether you can do the work with the team they have. NACE, the National Association of Colleges and Employers, describes career readiness through practical competencies like communication, critical thinking, teamwork, technology, professionalism, leadership, equity and inclusion, and career management. That is useful because it reminds you that being ready is not just having a dream. It is being able to show behaviors employers recognize. So when you are choosing a career, do not stop at, I like helping people. Translate it. Helping people could become patient coordination, academic advising, customer success, HR, social work, sales, training, recruiting, account management, or community programs. Those are very different jobs. The tests help you separate them. The fit test tells you which versions match your strengths. The market test tells you which versions have real openings and reachable requirements. The energy test tells you which versions you can actually stand doing. There are also a few misunderstandings to avoid. First, do not expect one assessment to name your future. Assessments can give language, but they cannot see your local market, your financial needs, your risk tolerance, or your actual behavior during hard work. Second, do not confuse interest with employability. It is fine to be interested in a field, but if you want to be hired, you need proof. Proof can be a project, a portfolio, a measurable result, a certification where it matters, a referral conversation, or experience framed correctly. Third, do not wait for total certainty. Career decisions are made with imperfect information. You are not marrying a job title. You are choosing the next experiment with the best evidence you have. A simple way to start this week is this. Pick 3 possible career directions. For each one, write a fit statement. Review at least 10 job postings and run 1 tiny real-world trial. 1 conversation, 1 shadowing request, 1 project, 1 rewritten resume section aimed at that direction. At the end, score each option from 1 to 5 on fit, market, and energy. The highest score is not automatically your final answer, but it is probably your next serious test. And if 2 options are close, choose the one that gives you more transferable proof. Skills like writing clearly, analyzing information, managing projects, working with customers, improving processes, and learning tools can travel across roles. That makes your next move less risky. Figuring out what career you want is not about discovering a hidden identity. It is about collecting better evidence than your fear, your boredom, or somebody else's highlight reel. Run the fit test, run the market test, run the energy test. Then make the smallest move that gives you the next piece of evidence. If you want, leave a comment with the career options you are deciding between, and I may use them for a future example. And if there is a job search problem you want broken down next, put that in the comments too.